All right, Kool-Aids, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel, and wow, where do I even begin? We just have to talk about what's happening with our beloved Barça. That Atletico Madrid game, a 2-1 loss. The final match of the year, and honestly, it just leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. It really does. So much to unpack, so much to analyze. Are things really as bad as they seem? Were there any positives we can cling to? In my opinion, yes, there were some sparks of brilliance, but let's be real, there are some deep-rooted issues plaguing this team, and these problems aren't just from this one game, they've been bubbling under the surface for weeks now. It's time for a brutally honest conversation, and today, we're diving deep into individual performances, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So buckle up, because this is going to be a long one, but a necessary one. We need to get to the bottom of this. First things first, let's dissect Hansi Flick's post-match comments. It's crucial to understand his perspective after that defeat. And surprisingly, Flick was positive. Yes, you heard that right, positive. I sensed real frustration from him, obviously. He was clearly not happy about losing a game we arguably controlled for large periods. But overall, his message was one of encouragement. He actually said we played a great game. He was very happy with the overall performance and stating this is the kind of style he wants to instill in the team. He even said the players made him proud, despite the disappointing result. So, Flick was pleased with the style, encouraged by the display, even though the result stings. Of course, he wasn't on the touchline, which, let's be honest, hasn't helped us these past couple of games. Flick not being able to relay those crucial in-game instructions is far from ideal. But at least in 2025, we'll have him back where he belongs, directing the team from the sidelines. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of the performance itself. Was it really that bad? Were there genuine signs of progress? Well, let's look at the stats, specifically the XG, expected goals. Atletico Madrid had an XG of just 0.63. They weren't even expected to score one goal, yet they bagged two. They massively overperformed their XG. Barça, on the other hand, well, you probably won't be surprised to hear this. We had an XG of 2.54. Over 2 goals, almost 3. And we ended the game with just 1. This, my friends, is the story of our season so far. XG, as you know, measures the quality of chances based on the probability of scoring. It's supposed to give you an idea of how effective you are in front of goal. But XG is only half the story. It tells you about the opportunities you create. The other half is actually putting the ball in the back of the net. And that, simply put, is where we are failing miserably. If there's one glaring problem with this Barcelona team this season, it's the finishing. And this isn't just a problem this season, by the way. This lack of clinical edge has been haunting us for several seasons now. We create a ton of chances. We are, by far, the best chance creators in La Liga. But we squander so many of them. We've now missed a staggering 50 big chances in La Liga this season. Think about the golden opportunities we've had, those massive moments that could have defined our season, and we've just let them slip through our fingers. It's agonizing, but there's another, even deeper problem I see creeping into our game, especially over the last few weeks. This isn't just about the Atletico game, it's a pattern. This is the inherent risk you take as a team when you only seem to get yourselves up for the biggest games. Let's be honest, that performance against Atletico was the best we've seen from Barça in weeks. There was a noticeable improvement in energy, intensity. It was much closer to what we expect from a Hansi Flick side. But therein lies the problem. If you're not performing like this consistently, week in and week out, you put immense pressure on these big matches. So far this season, in the biggest moments, we've actually risen to the occasion. We've silenced some doubts with crucial big game performances, but this is a double-edged sword. When you have a game like yesterday where you put everything into it, where you hype yourselves up, and then end up losing a game you really shouldn't have, you have nothing to fall back on. It's not like we can say, okay, we lost that big game, but look at all the wins we've strung together. Look at the consistent performances we've put in over the past few weeks. We have no such cushion because of our inconsistent form leading up to this match. If you save your best for the biggest matches, you have to deliver. You cannot afford to fall short. And that's why we find ourselves in this precarious position. 1 win in 7 league games. Yes, the Atletico game might have been unlucky, but the league table doesn't lie. We haven't been good enough. We haven't been consistent enough. We haven't brought our A game to every match. We've only been able to apply ourselves in certain situations, in certain games. And in a league season where consistency is paramount, that simply isn't going to cut it. It just isn't. And that brings me to another worrying trend that's been plaguing us recently. Let's talk about the goal we conceded in the 96th minute against Atletico. When that happened, I nearly threw my remote at the TV. I mean, seriously, what were we doing? I understand that in the dying moments of the game, we were desperate for a win. We wanted that late winning goal. It would have been incredible. The stadium would have erupted. But at the same time, you have to have some game intelligence. You have to understand the situation. We were playing Atletico Madrid. Surely the players on the pitch, some of them seasoned veterans, know what Atletico are all about. They are masters of the counterattack. They were just waiting for us to overcommit, to leave space in behind. And you cannot afford to do that against a team as clever as Atletico. They are so dangerous in transition. They maintain their energy right up until the final whistle, precisely for moments like this. And let's give credit where it's due. It was an absolutely fantastic finish from them to win the game. But again, I don't want to focus solely on this one game. This is a recurring problem. Look at the late goals we've conceded recently. 96th minute against Atletico, 94th minute against Betis, a game we completely threw away. And let's not forget the game against Celta Vigo, where we were 2-0 up and conceded in the 84th and then again in the 86th minute. These late goals are a serious issue. And it's no good saying, oh, it happens to every team, players get tired, it's just a late goal here and there. No, this is a pattern, and it's about mentality. It's about standing firm in the biggest moments. And again, this isn't exclusive to this season. We've seen Barça in past seasons throw games away, have the game in our hands, and then completely collapse. We can afford to see that in 2025. If we continue to give away points like this, we can forget about silverware. We can forget about being competitive in the crucial stages of competitions. It cannot happen, culés. And Flick has to address this immediately. He has to ensure that his players are not just playing for the first 45 minutes, not just for an hour, but right up until the 96th, 97th, or however many minutes are added on. You have to stay present, you have to stay switched on no matter what. Flick has to bring that back into this team because this is a major, major weakness. But okay, before we get into some concerning individual performances within this Barcelona team, let's inject some positivity into this conversation. Because there was something truly spectacular from yesterday's game. Something that made me smile amidst all the frustration. We have to talk about Pedri. His performance last night, that was the one shining light. That was the one thing that made me think, okay, we have something truly special here. Pedri is playing at a completely different level right now. He's gone to another level, and that's the only way I can describe it. You look at his influence, not just in this game, but in recent matches, and it's just growing exponentially. He's running games. He's absolutely controlling the tempo, picking up the ball in deep positions, driving at defenses, carrying the ball into dangerous areas, and dictating the play. He can make something happen out of nothing. He can initiate an attack all on his own. Just look at his goal. He picks up the ball in a wide position, miles from goal. Absolutely sublime. He picks up the ball wide, no one around him, a considerable distance from the goal, but the moment the ball is at his feet, the moment he starts driving at the heart of Atletico's defense, they simply didn't know how to handle him. They were scrambling, unsure how to approach him, how to dispossess him, and the timing of his release to Gavi, perfect. A brilliant little combination between the two, and then Pedri continues his run, anticipating the return, finishing it off flawlessly. If he could consistently finish like that, he'd be racking up some serious numbers. He has it in his locker. He has the ability. And his overall game, I saw some comparisons on social media, people saying Iniesta-esque. Now, you guys know I'm not a huge fan of comparisons, especially when you're comparing young players to absolute legends of the game. You don't want to burden them with that kind of pressure. But Let's be honest here, what we saw from Pedri last night, it was magical. And Iniesta, for me, was one of my all-time favorite players to watch. Pedri is doing things right now that evoke memories of Iniesta. I'm not saying he is Iniesta, obviously. Stepping into those shoes is an almost impossible task, but Barca needs a player like that. Barca has been missing a player like that since Iniesta left. Someone who can make things happen. Someone who can not only control the tempo of the game, dictate the passing, be a neat and tidy technical player in midfield. Someone also move with the ball, whose dribbling is off the charts, someone who create space and time for himself. Pedri has those characteristics. He has a quality about him right now that he's starting to showcase. He's starting to truly grow into it. He can achieve incredible things. There's no doubt in my mind. He has all the tools, and now we're starting to see it all come together. So if there was one positive, if there was one player who made us proud last night, who stood up and gave everything he had, it was Pedri. No question about it. However, and this is a big however, there are certain players in this Barcelona team who are simply not performing to the level we expect. And I want to talk about the squad as a whole, about several individuals who are, frankly, question marks right now. Questions are being asked of these players. And let me start by saying this. There are so many players in this squad, especially those on the bench, players who are brought on to make an impact, from whom you just don't know what you're going to get. You don't even know if they're good enough. You don't know what to expect. Take Ferran Torres, for example. Okay, against Dortmund, he came on and really changed the game. He showed some promising signs, some good moments. But at the end of the day, you never know what you're going to get from him. He hasn't lived up to the price tag, to the potential we saw when we signed him. So we're still waiting to see what kind of player he even is. And then there's someone like Fermin Lopez. Last season, he was extraordinary in his breakout campaign. He was coming off the bench, scoring goals. His finishing was fantastic. He was getting chances and consistently putting them away. And we've talked about how we need that from our midfielders. We need them to chip in with goals to ease the burden on our attackers. But this season, what's happened to Fermin in front of goal? I think his confidence has taken a hit. He hasn't really nailed down a consistent role, a proper position in Flick's team. He hasn't always played centrally. At times, he's been shunted out to the wings, which doesn't seem to suit him. And in front of goal, he's been nowhere near as sharp. And then you have a player like Eric Garcia, who comes on for the last 10 minutes against Atletico, in midfield no less. And I just keep asking myself, how are these players still here? How are they still managing to play for Barca? Why are we keeping players year after year who aren't contributing anything, who haven't shown any growth or improvement in their game? Why do we continue to persist with them? But here's the most baffling thing. Eric Garcia came on instead of Frenkie de Jong. Let that sink in. Eric Garcia against Atletico Madrid in the final 10 minutes when we needed a goal was preferred to Frenkie de Jong. Something has gone drastically wrong. And I don't mean a minor issue. There's a catastrophic problem with Frenkie right now. There has to be. He's been an unused substitute in our last two games, both of which we lost. We were in situations during those games where we needed something, a spark, a change. And Flick isn't even looking at him. He's not even giving him the time of day. What is happening with Frenkie de Jong, a player who's on extraordinarily high wages, one of the biggest earners in our entire squad, a player from whom so much was expected, especially under Hansi Flick. We thought he would really thrive in Flick's system. Now it could be a physical issue, but he's still on the bench. If you're on the bench, you must be fit enough to play. Otherwise, why would you be there? Why would Flick even include him in the squad if he wasn't ready to play? And yet, we're not even seeing him for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. An unused sub against Atletico, Eric Garcia preferred. And against Leganes, he didn't come on either. The alarm bells are ringing. Something is going on with De Jong, or perhaps nothing is happening, which is almost worse. And that, culés, is the problem with Barca right now. Looking at the starting X side and forgetting for a moment about the bench players and the injured players, because earlier in the season, let's not forget how good our starting XY was. It was absolutely formidable. When we lined up with our strongest team, we felt unstoppable. We've got this. These players are immense. But the problem we have now, the questions we have now, revolve around several players in that starting lineup who earlier this season were playing arguably the best football of their careers, not just at Barça, but in their entire careers. They were unbelievable. Jules Koundé was one of those. He was untouchable. He was Hansi Flick's favorite player. He was so crucial in that back line, and he was really contributing going forward. On the other side, Alejandro Balde made a strong return from injury and was putting in some excellent, consistent performances. Then you have someone like Gavi, who came into this team, broke through, and exploded onto the scene. He was absolutely essential to our midfield, bringing so much energy and intensity. But is he still at that same level? And it's the same story with Dani Olmo, who was magnificent after signing. Many people criticized him, doubted him in a Barcelona shirt, but he started his career here flawlessly. But that form has tailed off. He's been interrupted by injuries, and even in yesterday's game, he was benched by Hansi Flick. So we have a lot of players here, Koundé, Balde, Gavi, Olmo, who have shown us their peak level. We've seen what they can do, how good they can be, how effective they can be. And maybe it's the sheer number of games, maybe it's the demands placed on them throughout the season that have taken their toll. But can they recapture that form? Is that peak level their natural level? Or were they just on an incredible run, a hot streak, and now they've reverted to their normal level? That's the big question. What are these players capable of? What can they sustain? What kind of consistent level can we expect to see? In my personal opinion, I think we can get back to where we were. There are several players here who still have so much more to give. And then there's Raphinha. This is a tricky one. I find it difficult this season to be critical of Raphinha because of everything he's done. But even he, after the game yesterday, was incredibly self-critical. He said the defeat was his fault. He said, before their equalizer, I missed a huge opportunity, and on their last goal, I missed an unforgivable ball. I take full responsibility for this loss. One thing you have to say about Raphinha is that he takes ownership. He takes responsibility. He's done it all season long. When something goes wrong and if he's at fault, he'll hold his hands up. But it's hard to blame him, especially solely blame him, for a game like this, for a result like this. Raphinha obviously had massive moments in the game, really big chances to score, and that's where Pedri was instrumental, providing some incredible passes. And Raphinha should have scored. There's no two ways about it. He had opportunities where he should have had at least one goal. But let me say this about Raphinha. It's tough to be overly critical of him. He's a player who gives his all, who's always putting in the effort. But let's revisit the point about players reaching exceptional levels earlier this season. Take a specific example, the game against Bayern Munich. Remember that match? Raphinha was on fire. He scored a hat trick. But here's the key. To score those 3 goals, he had 3 shots on target. Every single time he shot at goal against Bayern, he scored. Now, can we realistically expect him to replicate that in every game? Of course not. You're not going to have a 100% conversion rate every time you shoot. If you did, you'd be breaking every goal-scoring record in football history. So obviously, Raphinha isn't always going to be that clinical. There's a peak level, an absolutely insane level that he's shown several times this season, but he won't always maintain that. He's not the type of player who's going to score with every shot. Maybe he's not even the type of player who will score a massive number of goals overall. At times, he's even overachieved in front of goal this season. But the beauty of Raphinha, and this is crucial, why I wouldn't blame him entirely for this game, is that he contributes far more than just goals. Let's be honest, he's lively, he makes things happen. He's constantly making runs, putting in the hard yards, and opening up space for his teammates. And of course, he's also the one pressing, giving maximum effort. He shows leadership and takes responsibility. So it's not just about goals with him. I can forgive him for missing a few chances. I can forgive him for not being as clinical as we'd like because of everything else he brings to the table. This, however, leads to a much bigger problem, especially when we talk about Robert Lewandowski. With Louis, it's a different story. His game is, well, let's be honest, it's limited. He's the number 9. His sole responsibility is to score goals. That's what he's there for. You don't see Lewandowski charging around the field, pressing intensely, or contributing much in other areas of the game. And that's understandable. He's 36 years old. He's our out-and-out striker. His job is to be in the box, in the right place at the right time, and score. But he simply isn't doing that right now. To be fair, for most of the season, he has been scoring. He's still the league's top scorer with 16 goals in 18 games, which is impressive. But I'd also point out that he's underperforming his expected goals, XG. We've provided Lewandowski with more than enough chances to be the top scorer. Yes, he's finished some of them, but we've really helped him with our chance creation. The problem now is that he's not scoring. In the last 7 league games, during this terrible run of form, he's only scored 2 goals. His form has dropped off a cliff. Some might argue, especially those outside the Barca fan base, oh, Barcelona fans are so ungrateful. Look at what Lewandowski has done this season. Why are you criticizing him after just a few difficult games? Support him. He'll come good. My massive concern with Lewandowski is that we've seen this before. We've seen this pattern at Barca almost every year he's been here. He starts the season strong. He looks fresh after preseason, sharp on the ball, finishing chances, scoring goals for fun. But once the new year hits, once the second half of the season comes around, he completely disappears. We see a different player. That's my biggest worry. We need the Lewandowski who started the season, much like several other players we've discussed. But Lewandowski's history of his form tailing off, his influence evaporating, is a massive concern. Because right now he's not delivering. Look at the chances he had yesterday against Atletico. The cutback from Ferran, Lewandowski is right in front of goal with the entire goal to aim at. Any kind of contact, and it's a goal. But somehow he doesn't connect properly. He's not scoring from these kinds of positions. This isn't just one miss or one game. This is a catalog of misses at crucial moments in our season, in the league. These are points slipping away before our eyes. And that's his job, not to sound like Roy Keane, but come on. As the center forward, the big number 9 at Barca, you have to score those chances. That's your job. But taking a step back for a moment, culés, let's just reflect on what Barca has been doing. Where's the light at the end of the tunnel? For me, it's still there. Our season isn't over. A lot of people are saying the season's done. We have no hope, no chance. But I still think there's enough quality in this team. There's potential there. If we can just get back to what we were doing earlier in the season, maybe this Christmas break will give us an extended period to try and regain some of those previous levels. But I have to ask you, culés, do you still have belief? Do you genuinely believe that Barca can make a comeback in the second half of the La Liga season? Looking at the Champions League, do you still think we can be competitive in that competition? These are crucial questions we need to be asking ourselves. But my biggest question today, the one I really want to hear your thoughts on, is this. How do you handle this Lewandowski problem? What would you do right now? What should Hansi Flick be doing, in your opinion? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. We've covered a lot in this episode, and if you have more questions or topics you want us to discuss, please leave them in the community section, because we'll be addressing more of these issues in the coming days. So, thank you so much for tuning in. If you've made it all the way to this point, I truly appreciate your dedication. Let's keep supporting this club. Let's keep fighting for this club, no matter what. Thank you for your incredible support.